What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I have with me Eugene Marais, coming
Yeah,
from the East Rand, South Africa. So, Eugene, thanks for joining
yeah,
me today.
you got it, man. Thanks for
Um,
having me. Appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for our conversation today. I believe outside of North America, you're
Yeah,
my first international guest. So I've had several Canadians. Um, you know, number of folks from Canada that I've met at conferences, but you are my first guest outside of this continent. So, welcome
well,
to the show, man.
awesome. Great to be the first.
Yeah. And I believe this is your first podcast as well, correct?
This is my very first podcast, so I am quite excited and nervous at the same time, which doesn't really make sense, but yeah, so it's awesome to be here.
Perfect. All right. Well, hey, you won't be the first person to make their first appearance on this podcast. I pride myself in bringing people on for their first, and everybody who's been on has done a fantastic job. I can't imagine it'll be any different with you. So, I want to
Fantastic.
dive
Let's get
into
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, let's
I
go.
want to dive into it. The first question I typically like to ask people, and everybody gets goes at this from a different angle, but talk to me about what you do now, and how you were first introduced to training, how you were first introduced to fitness, and what that journey looked like for you getting from point A to point B. What you do now?
Awesome. Yeah, so currently, I coach CrossFit in a part-time space. I want
Okay.
to make it full-time, but yeah, it's a little bit difficult. So I've got a full-time job in the IT industry, which also, once again, against my will. But yeah, leading up to where I am now was 2013, so it's quite a while ago. I was involved in
Okay.
quite a bad motorcycle accident. Before that accident, I did club road cycling. So
Okay.
sort of the stuff that the people in the Tour de France and stuff do, just not that intense. So that was my main sport. And then
Yeah.
I got into this accident with the motorcycle and I hurt the left knee and my right hip quite badly. Also broke my nose, had a very big concussion. But the worst was this right arm, which is, you can see in a brace at the moment. Yeah, it basically twisted around each other like this. So this is what the
Ooh.
bones must look like, and that's what had happened inside of my arm.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so imagine holding on to pretty much anything, especially cycling, like you have to hold on a pair of bars, not going to happen.
Yeah.
The first doctor that I ever saw immediately wanted to amputate my arm. My father just said there's not a chance, so uh, we got a second opinion. Oh, while I was unconscious, this was happening. So I got rushed off to a different hospital, and the doctor that was on call there said, no, he'll be able to save my arm. So thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
But a long story short, I visited a whole lot of specialists, like 16 plus, after this accident, together with lawyers and stuff like that. It was a whole court case. But long story short, they basically all of them told me that all the other stuff will heal, but you'll probably never able to do your road cycling again because you won't be able to hold on to anything properly ever again. I just didn't accept that answer. I was like, there's no ways. And then it took me about 3 months just to start walking properly again. And about 8 months after that, one of my friends actually introduced me to CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a coach there at the time that did like little rehab programs. So I got introduced to him while I was at the CrossFit, and we walked a short road together. He actually helped me get to a point where I can start using this hand and my wrist and all that whole stuff again. So it
Wow.
did help, but up until a point where it was like, okay, you can't really do much for me anymore. And I was still stuck. I couldn't get a bar in a front rack position. I couldn't pick up a dumbbell and put it on my shoulder. I was like, this is still not good enough. I also visited a whole bunch of physiotherapists and chiropractors, and same thing. All of them, the one physiotherapist that I actually saw actually ended up making my wrist worse
No.
just because they didn't know the nature of what we were dealing with and the type of training we wanted to do, what the end goal was. They never asked any of those types of questions. So I wanted to get out of that and get to a point where, listen, man, this is impossible. Don't tell me that I can't use my limbs ever again. It's not an acceptable answer. So I went on a whole journey for about 3 years, just training, doing my own type of rehab. I went to a whole bunch of different physiotherapists. I also ended up seeing a biokineticist, which helped quite a bit with mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually ended up with a physiotherapist that actually um, does the sport of CrossFit as himself, which is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. So he understood the movements and what we were doing and things like that. And the nice thing is this guy was a physiotherapist for some of our high-end rapid clubs, even some of the international rapid clubs. So he knows what he's doing, and that started helping me a lot. I've walked the journey with him for about 2, 3 years now already, and just learning from him what
Mm-hmm.
different things I can do to actually recover and take that back into the box, and implement that into my own life, into other people's lives. That's pretty much where a 10-year journey has taken very quick short turn to where I am now. Yeah, so that's the big thing. And with all the previous injuries that I've had in the past year, I don't know what happened. There must be someone that put some kind of curse over my life. Because last year I was in another motorcycle wreck where I blew out my right knee and like tore into my right calf. And same physiotherapist, we walked the journey through that. And I mean, there's no problem anymore. I can
Yeah.
use these limbs again. A couple of weeks ago, I slipped and fell and like cracked the same arm again.
Yeah.
And still same thing because of all the knowledge that I've gained from walking this path with these different physiotherapists and chiropractors. I actually know now how to recover a little bit quicker. Like I'm already out of
Yeah.
the sling, so which was supposed to be on my arm for 6 weeks. And I was like, no. So yeah, that's the short story from where I was to what I've done to where I am now. And that's the type of stuff I want to implement in other people's lives that wasn't
Yeah.
done for me through other coaches and other physiotherapists that's here in South Africa.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's sort of where the cultural thing will come in a little bit later.
Yeah. So for you, your impetus for getting into the field has
Mm,
really been your own story, which is
100%, 100%.
not the case with everyone. It's been, you had this accident, have
Yeah,
gone through
yeah,
this transformation, and now you're able to do a lot, obviously not currently, with the most recent
yeah, of
incident.
course, of course.
Um, but you're able to do a lot more than many physicians gave you credit for,
Definitely, definitely.
years ago. So,
100%. So,
uh,
uh, and even currently, I mean, I'm not letting this stop me. People think
yeah.
that's once again a South African mentality is if there is something broken or injured,
Hmm.
stop moving, quit it. Don't. It's like we had that call a couple of weeks ago as well when we were all in
Yeah.
that big chat room. It's the same type of thing. Quit the movement, and I can show people that's not the case. You can still keep on moving. So
Yeah. So let's dive in there, because I feel like that's a
yeah.
good thing to go ahead and explore. Um, there is, and I hear it a lot of times too, is over here people will say, hey, my doctor told me to stop doing this, because I had this incident or I was having
Mhm.
pain, and then your movement gets taken away slowly, one thing at
A
a
lot,
time.
yes.
Yeah. And it can be either drastic like yours would have been, or it can
Yeah,
be, something that's chronic and slow over time, where you get, less and less movement available to you because of what, just the beliefs that other people have about what you're capable
definitely,
of or what your
definitely.
body's capable of. So to me, there has to be like something in the middle, right? Like there has to
Correct.
be, like, you can't go from, fully fractured, twisted arm to,
Yeah,
cleaning the next week. You can't be working with the barbell the
yeah,
next
there's a
week. So
process. Yeah.
there has to be a process, and there has to be a middle ground, right? So what does what are the things you have to take into account that you've learned through your experience, that is kind of the principles that you implement in order to progress, make progress as you need to.
Yeah, so for me, the first thing I want to say is about something that you mentioned about a belief system.
Yeah.
That to me is point number one. So one thing I've always told myself, and that I'm telling all the people I coach now, and I'm pretty sure when people see this podcast, is they'll 100% agree with this, is I always tell people, don't say I can't, say I'm struggling to.
Yeah.
So then I can work with something. So I can't clean now, but I'm struggling to do power cleans now, but I'm working
Yeah.
towards it. Then we can start working. So that was the first thing that I decided. Listen, I'm not gonna go out the gate running. I
Yeah.
need to figure out how to crawl first, and then figure out how to walk first, and then figure out, okay, from there we can run.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people then mention, okay, but what if I can't crawl? What if I can't walk? What if I can't run? Then I would immediately say, okay, cool, then we'll start with running. Uh, Complete mind shift. So that's where I started with this journey, about trying to figure out how am I going to get through this. And
Mm.
that's the same thing I'm trying to implement with everyone else that I see and or coach, is they think that they see us doing certain things, or they see people through a window doing certain things as they drive past, and they won't be able to do that, which is not the case at all. So that was point number one, is starting with talking to myself,
Yeah.
and getting the mindset right. And I want to implement that with the people I coach as well. So, and then moving on with this journey was just knowing that my goal is not to get to the CrossFit Games. My goal
Yeah.
was to actually, yeah, was actually to use my limbs again. And I think that's another thing that people misunderstand, is that they think the goal is to get into a gym, whether it's a functional fitness, a CrossFit gym, or a normal gym, and lift as heavy as they can. And that's not the case at all.
Right.
We want to get people moving properly again. Yes, it's fantastic if you want to train for competitions. We can do that. That's fine. But just know that that's not where we're going to start off. If you can't even pick up a PVC off of the ground properly, how are you going to do that with a heavy barbell? Um, so yeah, I must say, helped quite a bit, because that actually showed that I can do a lot more, move a lot more, and get a lot more done with less weight.
Yeah.
Um, and it also helped me actually get the joints moving in all the right places, because it's not so heavy. I don't have to force it into certain places. I can work it into certain places. So I went from not being able to do a power clean to being able to do a very heavy power clean, without pain or injury or anything like that. Obviously, I'm going to have to work on that again, but
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
Yep.
I know how to do this now. So,
Right.
and that's what I want to keep on teaching people. So yeah.
Yeah. What, you know, of all the factors that you can control for when you're in a big, we'll call it recovery state like you are now,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you're not focused on setting any PRs right now. You're just focused on healing that arm. What sort of factors are you controlling for, that you might pay a little bit more attention to now than you would if you were just focusing on performance or
So,
just daily life?
yeah, so that's the thing is, because I know now what to look out for. I immediately know when or what's going to aggravate injury like this, or even with a
Yeah.
knee or a shoulder or anything like that. So, that's the type of stuff I take into consideration. I call them stupid things, because it's stuff you do automatically.
Yeah.
Things like picking up a cup, things like picking up a pan off of a stove. Small things like that I take into consideration. Driving, holding on
Mm.
to, because we drive, our cars are on the right-hand side,
Right.
our driver's seat. So holding on to things is um, things I take into consideration, that you shouldn't put extra force on. So I would say daily life, and small activities is things that you need to be aware of. And it sounds stupid, but it is things that can aggravate injury repeatedly quite easily.
Hmm.
Even brushing teeth can cause more harm while you're healing than actually your body healing itself. So
Mm.
I would say that's one of the things I definitely take into consideration. And then obviously, we're not going to go pick up heavy barbells.
Right.
Start back with the basics.
Yeah. Do you do anything differently when it comes to your sleep or your nutrition or anything like that?
So I do the sleep is pretty normal, but with the nutrition, I do dial back on adding any extra sports supplements. So
Okay.
I would still eat the right way, still eat the way I'm supposed to eat, but I'm not gonna over exaggerate adding extra protein and stuff like that where it's not needed.
Yeah.
Um, and I can definitely feel my body respond differently to that type of stuff. If I add too much protein and not too intense training, uh, me personally, I start to feel bloated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do dial back on supplements, but I do then also take into reconsideration is weighing my food properly. So
Mm.
that's a small type of things I would take into consideration. Once I get back into full on training, usually I can eyeball how much I should eat, and then
Sure.
obviously I supplement that with some extra protein shakes or creatine or stuff like that. But that's the stuff I
Yeah.
dial back on in recovery.
Yeah.
Um, I do take extra supplements in the sense of like extra collagen or maybe some milk
Mhm.
thistle to help the recovery get done quicker.
Yeah.
Because that's stuff I can't do outside of my body. So,
Right.
so yeah, that's the type of stuff I take care of.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, and it's interesting, especially with something like you're dealing with, extra collagen. I think a
Mm,
lot of times people take collagen for some of the wrong reasons. Like I know it's been touted as you know, all sorts of people are, taking it for skin or taking it
yeah,
for weight loss, and it might help a little bit with those, but there's not a ton of, backing research on that.
no, not at all, not
Um,
at all.
and but if you're talking about recovery, we know that if you're stressing things in the right way, if you're
Yes, yes,
like you said, not overdoing things,
yeah,
but you're adding, giving your body that extra collagen to deal with, hey, joints, bones, tissues
definitely,
that have
definitely,
been broken, like, or torn, or just need healing, right? Those are things that it can be very beneficial for. And
definitely.
it's something that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I think a lot of people have a little bit of a misunderstanding of what it's actually effective for.
Completely, completely. I mean, I sometimes recommend some of the older people that I coach who have
Hmm.
knee joint problems and things like that from jumping out of trees when they were younger. I
Right.
would suggest to them, listen, for let's say 3 months, try to use some collagen, see if it makes a difference in how your knees perform when you're doing squats. And
Yeah.
about 7 out of 10 times it does help.
Yeah.
The other 3 out of the 10 times, it's usually the type of collagen they use. And then I would tell them, listen, maybe go see your GP and get a refined collagen supplement that's
Right.
specific to either your bone mass or your blood type or whatever the case might be. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely big misunderstanding there.
Yeah. I want to, I'll be mindful of our time here, but I want to dive
Yeah,
into culture and cultural differences. I and I'm curious to see where we go with this. But
yeah,
from the people that you've worked with, especially involved in your journey 10 years ago to now,
yeah.
um, what are there things within South African culture that you feel hindered your journey, and things that you think helped? What has that looked like for you? And as someone who's entering the field and trying to go more full time, um, I know it's kind of a two-part question here, but
Yeah, perfect.
what are
Don't worry,
things
I've
that
got a
you
two-part
have
answer.
to overcome? Perfect. So let's dive
Yeah,
into it.
sure. So, this is also a thing I might get a lot of backlash on. I'm pretty sure of that, but I'm going to stick to my guns.
Perfect.
Uh, in South Africa, especially when CrossFit was launched in South Africa, we've got a lot of CrossFit affiliations, a lot of gyms, a lot of functional fitness places and stuff like that. So I'm talking out of a very small percentage. So I might even be wrong, but this is once again my experience.
Yeah.
And it's been the experience of a lot of people around me as well,
Yeah.
where the culture in South Africa is uh, when it comes to functional fitness or getting someone to coach you or train you, it's first and foremost about the money for them.
Hmm.
And I think that's a problem. I don't know if there is a culture like that where you guys are from, but it's definitely a big thing around here. And that's hindered my journey quite a bit. I've been to a couple of different gyms around um, my area and even outside of that, and I've seen that quite a lot. You will have coaches on the floor that has done all the necessary steps to get to the right affiliation, if I can say that, or apply for that. I think it has changed. I think there is a little bit more control now than there was a couple of years ago. Um, but my first hand or first off experience was that it was about the money. So I would go into a gym somewhere and tell them, listen, I've got this problem. I won't be, or I struggle to do these certain types of movements. Can you help me? And then the stuff that they would usually tell me is either quit the movement or the progressions they would give me is things that won't make sense, um, or they won't have an answer at all. And then once again, I would be left out on my own to figure out, listen, okay, I need to know what I need to do. And that's why I went on my own journey to actually get the right qualifications and things that, and learn about what I need to do so that I can avoid that. Um, and it's happened in more than one place. So that's part of what hindered my journey to get to this point.
Mm.
Um, and the money is a really big thing. I mean, it's crazy how people harp on. I want to open up a gym to make money and not open up a gym to help people.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
that's,
yeah,
go ahead.
that brings me like sort of to the second part
Hmm.
of that question. Is I don't want people around me to fall into despair because of this.
Right.
Um, I want to be that coach that people can say, you know what, if you have an issue, whether you want to train to get to the CrossFit Games or you want to train to get better at life, Eugene will be the guy that helps you. He's got the knowledge, he's got the insight, and he's not going to turn you away or stop a movement um, just because you can't pay or can't do what you need to do. If you can't do a front squat right now, sorry, I can't coach you. That's a lot of the times the mentality here. And that
Mm.
people they fall into despair completely and then they give up. And I want to try and avoid that completely. So the gym where I am now, we managed to do that quite well. So I'm very happy
Yeah.
about that. But so yeah, that's I wanna be able to take the people around me, even if it's just my closest family, and change their lives, I would have
Yeah.
already won.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and it's slowly but surely it's happening. It's very difficult to convince your own family because they know you too well.
Yeah.
So it's easier to convince a stranger sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's the whole mentality that I don't like. We call them. There's a phrase that we have in South Africa. I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash for this too, but we call them a gym butt. Um, and I think in your terms, it'll be like a gym bro.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the types of people we try to avoid because they'll tell you just to keep on lifting heavier, train past the pain, things like that. Not everyone, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
oftentimes that happens. So yeah,
Yeah, I think, anywhere you bring up some really good points. It's like anywhere you go, I think you're going to find people who just don't have empathy for other people's situation, right? And don't
completely,
understand that,
completely.
hey, someone may not be going through the exact same things that you are.
Mm,
Their struggles may be very different. and so, it's important. I think that's always a good rule of thumb, is like, hey, before I've really fully understood, you can never fully understand what someone's going through, but before I've really fully known someone, I'm not going to tell them, exactly what to do, unless obviously they're coming to me for that specific purpose.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you talk about like the
yeah.
gym bros, like, yeah, I think there's always going to be some people who are like that, who are telling you, think they know what's best for everyone, and doesn't won't take the time to
Train,
really,
train past the pain.
yeah,
Doesn't work.
won't take the time to really figure out, hey, this person has an issue that I'm not qualified to help them with. You talk about, go back to gym owners. One,
Mm, mm.
you know is that then your responsibility to figure out, hey, to get better, right? How do I take the steps to educate myself, work with this person,
Yeah,
and maybe put my, trust myself just enough and my skills just enough to
definitely,
put my faith
definitely.
faith in that person, and move along in their journey with them, right? Because if you're
Yeah,
coming to me like that, you're at a point where your hope is a little broken, and you're looking for a solution, right? And that's
exactly,
where you and
exactly.
I step in, right? A lot of
Correct,
times.
correct.
And being able to be that person, it's a very rewarding place to be.
It
But
is definitely, it is definitely.
it's also risky, because, right, you could be that person who, if you're not doing your due diligence, you're not doing everything right in terms of
Yeah,
doing the research, and listening to the person you're working with consistently, and taking the time to educate yourself, you could do more harm than good. And that's
definitely.
that's what you've experienced that on the other hand. And obviously it leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
It does.
And
I mean, I think also that actually brings up another point, is that another mentality in South Africa is people don't want to share information.
yeah.
And I'm talking about like people like us sitting on the other side of the client, or on the
Mm,
other side of the person you're trying to help. They they would see people like a chiropractor and a physiotherapist as their competition,
yeah.
instead of someone they can help or work with.
Right.
I mean, I would absolutely love it if someone comes to me and says, "Listen, my physiotherapist says A, B, and C." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
sweet. Can I talk to your physiotherapist as well, so that I can
Yeah.
see if I give you a program, will he approve?" Great. Yes, he
Yeah.
does. Awesome. Let's work together. Next time you go
Yeah.
to the physiotherapist, he sees you're stronger, or whatever the case might be. It's the same with gyms. Um, they don't want to work together to create a
Mm,
community.
yeah.
Um, and the whole reason we have this on is part to become part of a community.
Yeah.
So I've seen that as well as quite a bit, is they don't want to help each other be successful. It's this whole I'm better than you, or you're better than me. We have to see if we can eradicate each other instead of build up each other.
Yeah.
Um, Once again, that's just my experience, but I think a lot of people will agree with that. And yeah, so I mean, we need to be able to share and do the right thing and do our due diligence, um, to help the people properly. I mean, I've had physiotherapists that hurt me because they didn't ask questions.
Right. Right.
So it's really not difficult, guys. It's stuff we can change people's lives with this by
Yeah.
asking really, really easy questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you made a good point. There can often be this, I think we call it scarcity mentality, right? Where everybody's trying to get their piece of the pie, so to speak, when it
Yeah,
comes to
definitely. Drives me
available
nuts.
clientele, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. There's you know I have several clients that I work with. Their chiropractors. I work hand in hand with their physical therapists. And it's it's way better for the client, and for
Definitely.
our businesses.
Yes.
We're able to provide a higher level, a higher quality, a better result of the service, if you know we work hand in hand and communicate with one another, rather than, oh, if I give somebody this exercise, and their physical therapist then gives them that
Mm,
same day the 4 sets of the same exercise. Now our volume is all out of whack, and maybe we end up
exactly.
hurting that person, right?
There we go.
Um,
So
and
you
so
don't want to
it's
do
it's
that.
definitely, Yeah, it's definitely harmful to the client and the patient. It's not good for business. It doesn't look good on anyone, and so I think it's, you know, always. And one of my very first business mentors, Andrew Coates. You may have heard of him. He's up in Canada
Mm,
in Edmonton, but his thing is always like, hey, if you can communicate with one another, if you can lift each other up, make good referrals, like you're always going to be held in high regard that way.
definitely.
And that's how people are going to get served best, and that's how, everyone's going to get the most the best experience out of it. And I know, we're coming up on where I want to be in terms of time. So I wanted to just ask, like,
Cool,
hey, is there
cool.
anything you wanted to share on this podcast that you feel like you haven't quite gotten to cover yet?
The only thing that I could say is from I almost want to say this comes sort of from the bottom of my heart is like I don't want anyone ever to give up on themselves.
Yeah.
Um, it's always going to be you versus you, and nobody is coming to save you, but there are people that will help you. You just need to take the step in the right direction and put your hand out to grab those people's attention. And that's a really big message I want to put out there is ask for help. Don't don't let life hold you back. If I'm anything, I'm probably the one of the best examples of that. If I could
Yeah.
share my entire life story, it'll be probably a novel. So let's not go there, but that's the biggest thing is you don't have to go through whatever you're busy with alone, even if it's a mental problem. I'm pretty sure what we can implement in your life can even help you with that. Because everyone I've ever coached feels better after they have lifted something.
Right.
So yeah, man, just don't give
That's
up on
great.
yourself. Don't do it alone. That's
Yeah.
all I gotta say.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Eugene, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
So I'm pretty much on all the major social media platforms. I'm still working on a YouTube channel, but
Awesome.
my handle is at Coach Jeefster. So it's sort
Nice.
of a nickname that I got growing up is Jeefster. So that just stuck. So at
Cool.
Coach underscore Jeefster on pretty much all my platforms except for Facebook. It's just my normal Eugene Marais name. But mostly TikTok and Instagram is where I'm most active.
Awesome. Well, Eugene, thank you for coming today. Thank you for coming on the show. Um, and I appreciate your time. And for those listening, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the invite. Appreciate it.